Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today we're embarking on a journey into some really profound ancient texts,
hmm
specifically excerpts from a collection known as the Savaja Avago. Our mission, as always, is to extract the most insightful nuggets. We'll unpack how our very perception of the world shapes our experience and maybe uncover a path to a different kind of freedom.
Yeah, a real sense of liberation.
We're going to explore how these sources define concepts like suffering, self, and even the world itself, and why that understanding could fundamentally, shift your perspective.
It's a fascinating exploration, really, looking into the inner workings of our sensory experience and how that connects to these profound states. What's truly striking here is how directly these texts, penned thousands of years ago, speak to the nature of our daily lives right now.
Yeah,
It's quite timeless.
absolutely. So, our journey into these texts really begins at the very interface of our experience,
Mm.
the six sense bases. We often talk about the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Pretty standard stuff on the surface. But what's truly striking in these texts is how they meticulously break down the entire chain of experience that springs from these senses. How do these ancient wisdom traditions view this fundamental interaction with the world?
Well, the text describe this process with remarkable precision. It's quite systematic. We have what are called the internal sense bases, the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, our faculties.
Or windows to the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there are corresponding external sense objects, forms or sights, sounds, odors, tastes, tangibles or touch, and importantly, mental objects like ideas or thoughts.
Okay.
The fundamental process described is that the interaction, the meeting of an internal sense base with an external object generates a consciousness.
So like eye meets form.
It creates eye consciousness.
Yeah.
Precisely. This immediately leads to what they call contact or samphasa,
Contact, got it.
which in turn gives rise to feelings, vedana. And these feelings, crucially, can be pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. That's the immediate result.
So it's a chain reaction, really. Sense organ, object, consciousness, contact, feeling.
Yes. And as one text puts it, this diversity of elements, the anatta, leads directly to a diversity of contact, and from that, a diversity of feeling.
Right.
So if our entire experience is constantly arising from these dynamic interactions, well, it raises a critical question about its inherent stability, doesn't it?
Yeah, what does that imply about anything we try to hold on to, if it's always arising and passing away?
Exactly. Stability becomes a real question mark.
That's a powerful point. So our perceptions create our feelings, but here's where these sources take a truly radical turn, I think. They don't stop at just describing how we perceive. They offer a very particular, almost counterintuitive perspective on the very nature of everything we perceive. They emphasize three core characteristics that challenge our deepest assumptions about reality itself. Let's start with the first one, impermanence.
Yes, anicca. It's absolutely central. The teaching is that all these elements, the sense bases, their objects, the consciousness that arises, the contact, the feelings, all of it is anicca, impermanent.
Everything.
Everything in that chain. And this isn't just a casual observation like, oh, things change. It applies rigorously to past, present, and future experiences. As one passage powerfully asks, if the ear is impermanent, past and future, what then of the present? It forces you to see the constant flux right now.
Wow. So it's not just that things will change, but that they are changing constantly.
Precisely. The profound insight here isn't just that things change, but that our resistance to that change, our constant striving for permanence in an inherently impermanent world, is where dissatisfaction really takes root.
That makes sense. Fighting against the current.
It's a radical call to reevaluate our very relationship with time and experience itself.
Okay, and building directly on this concept of radical impermanence, these texts suggest an even deeper truth about our experience. The second characteristic.
Exactly. They link it directly. The sources declare, what is impermanent? Is it happiness or suffering? And the answer given is, it is suffering, or dukkha.
Suffering, even pleasant things.
Yes. So all sense bases, objects, consciousness, contact, and feelings are seen as suffering, or perhaps better translated, unsatisfactory, because they are impermanent.
That might sound jarring, especially when we talk about pleasure. How can pleasure be suffering?
Right. It's a common sticking point. But the texts present this provocative idea. What the world considers happiness, the noble ones consider suffering. Now, this isn't saying pleasure is inherently bad or that you shouldn't enjoy things.
Okay.
But rather, why would something pleasant be considered suffering in this framework? It's because it's impermanent, it's unreliable, and therefore it cannot provide lasting, true satisfaction.
Because it's going to end.
Exactly. It's inherently tied to change and eventual loss, making it fundamentally unreliable as a source of lasting happiness or peace. It sets you up for disappointment, essentially.
I see. The unreliability is the key.
Precisely.
And finally, the third characteristic, which for many might be the most challenging to really grasp, non-self, anatta. The idea that there's no fixed, enduring me at the center of all this.
Right.
How do these texts explain that? And what's a common, maybe, misconception people have when they first hear this?
It's definitely a tricky one. The texts repeatedly declare anatta, meaning not mine, not I, not myself. And this applies to everything in that perceptual process we discuss. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, their objects, and all the subsequent feelings.
So nothing is me or mine.
In an ultimate, permanent, independent sense, yes. The core idea is that nothing within this entire flow of perception is a permanent, independent self or truly belongs to a fixed self. The Suññāllaka Sutta even says, because it is empty of self or anything belonging to a self, therefore it is called the world empty.
Empty.
But the key takeaway here, and this addresses the misconception, isn't that you don't exist. That's nihilism, and that's not the point. It's that the fixed, separate you often feel yourself to be, that solid core, is more like an illusion, a construct arising from these impermanent processes.
Yeah.
True freedom, the texts suggest, comes from understanding yourself as a dynamic, interconnected flow rather than a rigid, isolated entity.
So not annihilation, but redefinition.
Exactly. It's about redefining what we think of as self. Seeing it as a verb, perhaps, rather than a noun.
Okay, so let's put this together. If everything we perceive is impermanent, ultimately unsatisfactory because of that impermanence, and not truly ours or a fixed self, what's the practical implication? Where do we go from there?
Right. What do you do with that understanding?
Yeah. These sources offer a clear path, it seems, starting with a crucial choice point. Many of us naturally chase pleasure as a path to happiness. How do these texts explain why clinging to what seems pleasant ultimately traps us? What's the mechanism?
The Gāhapativago collection of suttas lays this out very directly. It talks about encountering delightful and desirable sense objects, nice sights, sounds, tastes, thoughts.
The good stuff.
The good stuff. Now, if one delights in, approves of, and holds on to them, then consciousness becomes dependent on that. It gets hooked.
Okay.
This leads to clinging, or upadana. And this clinging is presented very starkly as the cause, hitu, and the condition, pakayo, why some beings do not attain final liberation.
Final liberation meaning?
Meaning the ultimate freedom from suffering and the whole cycle of rebirth, as understood in this tradition. So it's the attachment, the holding on tightly to these fleeting experiences, even the pleasant ones, that perpetuates our dissatisfaction.
Wow, that's a significant shift in perspective. So it's not the pleasure itself, but that clinging to it, the refusal to let it go when it naturally changes, that's the core issue.
Exactly. That's the crucial distinction.
Yeah.
The texts from Nandikaya explicitly state that nandi, which is delight, craving, grasping, leads to dukkha samudaya, the origin of suffering. The cause. Conversely, if one does not delight in, approve of, or hold on to these sense objects, then that delight, that nandi, ceases. And quite logically, from the cessation of delight, suffering ceases. Nandi nirota, dukkha niroto.
So there's a direct causal link. Stop the clinging, stop the suffering.
It's about recognizing that powerful pattern of cause and effect playing out constantly within our own minds. Seeing it clearly is the first step.
And this non-clinging, this seeing things as they are, impermanent, unsatisfactory, non-self, leads to a powerful outcome, a state of being that's described repeatedly throughout our sources as the ultimate goal. Can you elaborate on that state?
Yes, there's this recurring passage. It's quite famous and summarizes the path beautifully. Eva pasa bhikkhave suttava aryasavako, nibinda virajati viraga vimukati, and so on.
What does that mean, roughly?
It means seeing this impermanent, unsatisfactory, non-self nature of all experiences, a well-taught noble disciple becomes disenchanted, vibindati.
Disenchanted, like losing illusions.
Exactly. Not cynical, but seeing through the allure, the false promise of permanence and ultimate satisfaction in these things. From that disenchantment, dispassion, virajati, arises, a cooling down of the feverish wanting.
Yeah.
And from dispassion, liberation, vinukati, is achieved, freedom. With that liberation comes the direct knowledge, the jnana, of being liberated, and the understanding that birth is destroyed, meaning no more compulsory rebirth into suffering. The holy life has been lived. The spiritual path is complete. What was to be done has been done. There is no more for this state of being.
That sounds incredibly profound. Complete freedom.
It is the ultimate goal described here, yes, a complete freedom from future suffering. It really does sound like a complete reorientation of how we engage with our perceptions, our entire experience.
It certainly does. It's a fundamental shift. But okay, how do we actually do this? It sounds great in theory, but what practical steps or insights do these texts offer to help us cultivate this disenchantment and liberation? It can't just be intellectual understanding.
No, absolutely not. The understanding has to lead to practice. The sources provide more specific guidance, particularly around cultivating inner discipline and mindfulness. For instance, in the Kuita Dukkha Sutta and Kuita Anatta Sutta, it's emphasized that chandopapabo desire, or maybe intention based on desire, is to be abandoned.
Abandon desire. For what specifically?
Specifically for anything that is seen as suffering, dukkha, or non-self, anatta, which, as we've discussed, applies to the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, and all the experiences derived from them. It's about consciously letting go of the craving for anything within this impermanent flow.
That's a tall order.
It is. It's a gradual training. It's not about instant suppression, but about understanding the nature of desire and its consequences, and gradually withdrawing fuel from it.
And this isn't just about the world outside, the sights and sounds, is it? It's really about our inner landscape, too, how we relate to our own thoughts and feelings.
Absolutely. That's crucial. The Devadahabbo highlights the importance of appamada, which translates often as heedfulness, diligence, or vigilance regarding the six sense bases.
Heedfulness, like paying close attention.
Yes, paying careful, non-judgmental attention. When one is heedful, the texts say, and the mind is not overwhelmed or sort of swept away by either pleasant or unpleasant sense objects.
Right.
It cultivates effort, mindfulness, a tranquil body, and a concentrated mind. This state isn't just a side effect. It's explicitly described as a fruit of heedfulness, showing the direct benefits of this inner awareness and discipline.
So mindfulness of the senses protects the mind.
In a way, yes. It prevents the mind from being hijacked by every passing sight, sound, or thought.
And speaking of inner states, the texts also talk quite a bit about agitation, Aja. They seem to identify it as a core problem, an obstacle.
They do, very starkly. The Dutya puts it powerfully. Agitation, monks, is a disease. Agitation is a boil. Agitation is an arrow. Strong language.
A disease, a boil, an arrow.
It emphasizes how painful and detrimental this inner restlessness is. It explains that a truly liberated one, the Tathagata, dwells without agitation, with the arrow removed. Neho viharati citta salo.
And how do you remove that arrow? What's the key?
The key, according to the text, is to stop identifying with anything. The eye, forms, eye consciousness, eye contact, or even the feelings arising from them as mine, I am, or myself.
Back to non-self again.
Exactly. It says, if you perceive this is mine, that is where agitation arises. That sense of ownership, that identification is the agitation, or at least its root. Letting go of that identification removes the arrow.
These teachings also offer some really radical redefinitions of reality itself, don't they? I'm thinking about how they define the world. It's not what we usually think.
Indeed. It's not about geography or cosmology in this context. The Chanavago answers this directly. Whatever is perishable, palakadamed, that is called the world in the noble discipline.
So the world is simply everything that falls apart.
Essentially, yes. The world isn't some fixed external place out there, but the entirety of our perishable sensory and mental experiences, our eyes, ears, smells, tastes, touches, thoughts, and all the phenomena they perceive. All of it is subject to decay and dissolution. That's the world we need to understand.
That really puts things in perspective.
And to help cultivate detachment even from our own physical form, which we often identify with so strongly.
Yeah.
The Bhardvaja Sutta offers a particularly stark, almost clinical meditation. It advises reflecting on the body as being full of various impurities, listing things like hair, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinews, bones, marrow, kidneys, heart, liver.
You get the idea?
It's quite graphic.
It is. The point isn't to cultivate disgust necessarily, or to be morbid, but to cut through superficial attraction and attachment by understanding the impermanent composite nature of the body, seeing it as an assembly of elements constantly changing, rather than a solid, fixed, inherently desirable me or mine.
So it's another tool for disenchantment, for seeing things as they are, precisely, breaking down the object of attachment to see its underlying nature.
Okay, bringing all these threads together now, what emerges is this profoundly different map of reality, right? One that directly impacts how we experience our everyday lives and how we might pursue genuine well-being. What's the sort of ultimate implication when you synthesize all this?
Well, it means that our consciousness, our very perception, the bedrock of our experience, arises moment to moment from this constant interaction of impermanent, ultimately unsatisfactory, and non-self elements. The Dukkha Sutta explains this really clearly. Consciousness is born from the pairing, the vaya, of a sense organ and its object eye and forms, ear and sounds, and so on.
The pair.
The pair. And it stresses that both the organ and the object are impermanent, perishable, subject to change. Nothing stable there. And this entire process, including the contact and the feelings that arise, is described as being agitated and subject to destruction.
Agitated and subject to disruption.
So our entire perceived reality in this view is this dynamic, transient, ownerless, and ultimately ungraspable flow. Trying to find lasting security or a fixed self within it is fundamentally misguided.
This deep dive into these ancient texts really gives us such a powerful, maybe challenging, but powerful framework for understanding our own experience. It suggests that true liberation, true freedom, isn't about accumulating more things or experiences, but about radically reevaluating what we perceive and, crucially, how we relate to it.
Exactly. If we can really begin to see, to understand deeply that everything we experience through our senses and our mind is impermanent, ultimately unable to provide lasting satisfaction and not truly ours in a fixed sense, then letting go of the desire to cling to it, letting go of that nandi, that craving, that becomes the path. That letting go is the pathway to genuine freedom and a deep, unshakable peace that isn't dependent on circumstances.
So here's a final thought for you, our listeners, to mull over. If happiness, as the world often defines it, in terms of accumulating external pleasures, achieving status, maintaining stable identities, if that kind of happiness is ultimately based on impermanent things and is therefore, as these texts suggest, a subtle source of dissatisfaction or suffering, consider this. What might a truly lasting, unshakable state of well-being actually feel like? And how might you begin to cultivate it? Not by looking outward for more fleeting gratification, but by looking inward very carefully at the fundamental nature of your own perceptions.